What is the one thing that arguably influences your hormones the most that most people are ignoring or completely unaware of? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. I am known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's video. Today, I have a chat with my friend Rudy from Viva Rays, and we talk about how hormones are completely thrown out of balance, how this process actually happens, how we lose fertility, how we start going into menopause earlier and earlier, and how when we are in these stages like perimenopause and menopause, how they become more dysfunctional because of light. I know, it sounds crazy, it sounds too simple, but I didn't believe it until I started having my own issues with my own hormones. And the perfect diet just wasn't cutting it. So again, today, Rudy and I sit down. This is an Instagram Live, and I wanted to share it with my YouTube family because I know some of you guys don't go over to Instagram. And I just thought it was such a really, really important conversation. Now, a couple quick things. We talk quite a bit about leptin in this conversation, and leptin influences our hormones, our fertility, our heart, our anxiety, depression, so many different functions in the body. And we're very myopically focused on glucose and insulin and these things. So I've created a 21-day leptin reset, and you can access that by going to the link down in the information section. It gives you a full comprehensive 21-day course all about how to reset your leptin levels. So if that's of interest to you, check that out. I have several courses you can access down in the show notes. And today's sponsor is Viva Rays. These are my Viva Ray glasses that Rudy has on during the interview. They are clip-on glasses, so you can layer them on. Usually I wear the base layer if I'm on a device or computer, the orange layer after sunset, and the red layer before going to bed. So these are really great glasses. You can use my code YOGI to save 15% off over at Viva Rays. That is Rudy's company, the person I was speaking with today. But I think you guys are gonna find a lot of really valuable information in this conversation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah.
I love where you're sitting. Are you in your backyard?
Yeah, I'm in my backyard. It's very warm, so I'm a little flushed, but and you're outdoors as
Happy
usual.
summer solstice, by the way.
Huh?
Happy summer solstice.
Oh, I know. Yes, it was what, 2 days ago, right?
Yes, Tuesday.
Yeah, the longest day of the year.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of light coming in.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I was just kind of talking a little bit before I brought you in that, you know, I feel like in the health and wellness space, we end up just talking about food and supplements, and we completely ignore light when it comes to things like fertility and hormonal health. We ignore circadian rhythms. We just, and I thought those things really didn't matter, you know, until I got to the point where I was doing everything humanly possible with diet and with supplements and just, you know, exercise and all that stuff. And I still wasn't having hormonal balance. And so, and fertility. So I'd love to talk about that. And I know you had a list of like five things that you want to talk about as well? I printed it out, but I forgot to bring it out here.
Yeah, definitely. I highly agree with the space in health and wellness about all of the things that we ignore and some of the things that we tend to really zoom in on and dwell in. And often these things are related to effects in our life, which can get utterly complex. But if we take a step back beyond effects, there are causes. And anytime I have dealt with imbalances in my body, with any type of toxicity, whether it was a sleep problem or depression or anxiety or weight gain, you name it, anything that is in the realm of effect is always stemming from one particular cause, which is breaching the law of balance. And it's as simple as this. Whether in the way we eat, we can be breaching the law of balance by overeating, or in the way we relate to our environment. Our environment is designed for balanced rhythmic interchange between day and night. And this signaling is absolutely important because every cell in our body, every atom, is waiting to receive this contrast between light and darkness, so that it unites with the environment. It's not only us human beings who we are continuously looking to unite, to feel powerful. Every single living thing in our environment and in our body is continuously looking to unite, to find a point of balance. And when we are continuously living in an environment where we are creating things off balance, such as wanting to be active all the time, we cannot be active unless we come back to rest. And activity and the right action is always springing from the 0 point of rest. And we can see this happening all over in the universe, and not only in our body. Every light wave of motion springs from the 0 point of rest. And quantum physics is starting to talk about this point of singularity and that 0 point in the universe that from which all light waves of motion spring. So when it relates to fertility, it's definitely related to our circadian behavior, our circadian clock, and how much our body is in tune and in harmony with the environment, and how much our body is feeling that it has enough energy reserve to create a baby.
Yeah.
Okay, now there's a lot of other things related to this, but I'm going to speak today, let's say, about leptin resistance, which is often a symptom, or infertility being a symptom of leptin resistance.
And I'll mention about a year ago, when I was trying to understand why pregnancy wasn't happening easily for me, I tested my leptin and it was actually low. So you can have high leptin or you can have low leptin, and it's going to affect your fertility regardless. But I had low leptin from doing a lot of fasting, and I still had weight to lose. So you can have low leptin and still be a little bit overweight, because I was at the time. Leptin is like something that I've just really, really studied hard over the last year to understand it. And now I even have a leptin course of how to reset your leptin, because I think that when we're looking at our hormones, if we're ignoring leptin and not understanding all the different parts of the body that leptin influences, then we're missing the boat. Everyone just wants to look at blood sugar, which is important, and insulin is important. But if we ignore leptin, my blood sugar was great, my insulin was great, and I'm like, well, what am I missing? And it was the leptin was low. And so then I had to understand, which I'm sure you're about to talk about, the fact that leptin is a circadian hormone, correct?
Absolutely. Again, we could dwell in blood glucose level, we could dwell in insulin and leptin, and all of these different complex effects, which will never lead us to resolving the problem. Why? Because if the problem is being caused by a lack of balance, by habits that we have chosen to do, that are continuously breaching the law of balance, we have the free will to take any action that we choose. However, the universe will hold tight with balancing all of our actions with equal and opposite reactions until we learn our lesson and we change something about the actions that we're taking. Now, when it comes to leptin, for those of you who are not familiar with leptin, it's a satiety hormone that is stored in fat tissues. And leptin actually senses the energy balance in the body, and it signals to the hypothalamus in the brain, letting it know whether we have enough energy reserve or not, right? Mm-hmm. And also through this, it signals to our brain that we're feeling full after every meal, so it shuts down our hunger levels. Now, how is all this related to light? Because we now know that junk artificial light make us leptin resistant. Now, what does that mean? Most of us in the modern world, we are exposed chronically to LED bulbs and screens. And if we observe the spectral curve of an LED bulb and screen, we will see that it peaks in 455 nanometer wavelength, which is a very small part of the blue light. It's not even the whole blue light, because I don't want my conversation to seem as if I'm saying blue light is bad. We gotta kind of snap out.
I'm getting blue light right now. Blue light is right here,
Absolutely.
but I'm also getting infrared light, red light, you know, all the other spectrums that come along with being outdoors. That's
absolutely.
The problem is
and
just
you're getting
having
also
blue light, correct?
absolutely, and also like let's also like maybe tune this a little bit more. We're not even having the full spectrum of blue light from artificial light.
Right.
We're having this narrow spike at 455 nanometer that is also very deficient in the blue turquoise at 480 nanometer. And this frequency, there has been a lot of studies showing that chronically exposing ourselves to this frequency increase reactive oxygen species, which is a metabolic byprocess. So it's a byproduct of our cell metabolizing food. It's a byproduct of living, actually. And reactive oxygen species also is not necessarily something bad, because for like blue light in nature, the blue light that you are sitting in right now and the UV light that you're sitting in right now will definitely increase your reactive oxygen species. And this is not necessarily something bad. Guess what? Exercise increases our reactive oxygen species. And when this is done in moderation, it's actually very good, because it's gonna increase the production of antioxidants, and it will enhance our immune function. However, we all know that it's impossible for any human being to exercise for 24 hours 7 without hurting themselves.
Right.
Because again, they gotta come back to this cycle of rest through which they spring back into action. And if someone chooses, let's say, to be active all the time and not going into the resting mode, they're gonna start increasing those reactive oxygen species in an abnormal way, which could lead to a mitochondrial, to a damage in the mitochondrial DNA, and it starts leading, it leads into inflammation, aging, and neurodegenerative disease. Now, how is that related to light? Because we also know that our chronic exposure to this 455 nanometer in our lifestyle is also increasing this reactive oxidative species, oxygen species, in an abnormal way. And when this happens, it increases inflammation. And when we become inflamed, it blocks the leptin signal to the brain that we have enough energy reserve in our body.
Right.
And the hypothalamus is, it's responsible of controlling the energy balance in our body so that it can orchestrate all these different functions, from the pituitary gland to the adrenal gland to the thyroid. And when the hypothalamus is not able to know that we have enough energy reserve, it loses its tight grip over metabolism and over growth. So basically what happens then is that the body will not be able to produce all the biochemical and biophysical changes to prepare our body to make a new baby.
Right.
Okay. And in that state, the hypothalamus is thinking, or the whole body is thinking, that we don't have enough energy. So we shift from a state of creation into a state of survival. In other words, the body starts becoming, it enters this scarcity mode in which it's anxious about trying to preserve as much energy as possible. It increases our hunger level so that because it thinks that we don't have enough energy. So we start eating more, even though our body doesn't need it. And every aspect of our body, every cell in our body is in a state of survival, trying to preserve this energy. And in that state, the body doesn't favor fertility. It doesn't favor sex hormones. It doesn't favor libido. It doesn't favor longevity, beautiful hair, and beautiful skin. It's going to shut all these things down because it's trying to preserve that energy.
Right. And then at night, you know, reactive oxygen species, we're supposed to have a mechanism to deal with that, and that's melatonin production, that's sleep production. But again, if we're exposing ourselves to artificial light at night, the melatonin never happens, right? And leptin docks to the hypothalamus at night while we sleep, usually around midnight. So, you know, give or take, different for everyone else. But if that melatonin is not present in the system, if in adequate amounts for our bodies to undergo autophagy, apoptosis, deal with that inflammation we created during the day, then leptin can't dock to the hypothalamus. And that's another way we become leptin resistant through that artificial light, right? Because we're destroying those melatonin stores. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. One, or let's say two of the most efficient ways of dealing with reactive oxygen species and inflammation, which again, they're not like a natural byproduct
Yes.
of living,
Yes.
right? And they're not necessarily bad. And you can think of those reactive oxygen species as, you know, fumy oils coming off a hot pan when you're cooking in the kitchen. You're making a mess, and when you make a mess, you turn on the exhaust, you clean after you, and then the kitchen becomes clean again so that you could still use it. In our body, we have two main mechanisms to deal with this mess. Number one is when we are in sunlight during the day, the red and infrared lights from the sun, they trigger our mitochondria or the cell to produce locally produced melatonin, which is very different than circulatory melatonin. It has nothing to do with sleep. And this melatonin gives our cells the ability to deal with those reactive oxygen species on site.
Yes.
It's like, you know, having, you know, on-site cleaners that come in as you're cooking in the kitchen. Yep. And they start cleaning all this mess after you so that you can keep going and that you can stay creative in the kitchen and don't, you know, restrict yourself because of all the mess that you have done. And most people are continuously missing this sunlight, so they're not getting this mechanism activated. The second mechanism is the one that you mentioned, which is the production of circulatory melatonin. Yes. Which again is produced in the eye in morning sunlight, in morning UVA. And it's only and it's only activated at night in response to complete darkness. Our eyes need to stop perceiving blue and green light and bright light at night, so that the pineal gland start producing the melatonin, and so that this melatonin goes into our blood and start traveling into every part of the body. And it's the highest antioxidant in nature.
Yes.
So without this melatonin, we cannot undergo proper autophagy, apoptosis, and even our mitochondria cannot undergo proper mitophagy, and they cannot recycle themselves.
Right.
And mitochondria that cannot recycle themselves over a period of time, they start losing their efficiency.
Right, and it's not the same to be taking an exogenous melatonin supplement, because we're missing all the cofactors, we're missing a whole, just taking that exogenous melatonin is not going to solve this issue. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely, because again, if we come back to the same principle that melatonin is an effect of living in balance and getting the proper light and dark information that nature has designed us to take, not only for the sole purpose of producing melatonin, but for thousands of the different processes that are interconnected with melatonin. So thinking to ourselves that we can override this, you know, thousands or even millions of years of interacting with nature in a very specific way by taking a melatonin pill is far off from living an optimal lifestyle. And this is what start leading people to live off balance, because they think that they can breach the law of balance.
Yep.
They think that they could do what they want and overcome all these imbalance actions by taking a pill. Again, you are a human being. You have a free right to take any action that you will.
Yeah.
And no one can impede you from taking those actions. But remember that the universe always holds tight the right to balance all of your action with equal and opposite reactions. So taking a melatonin pill is absolutely in disharmony with living a balanced and harmonious lifestyle with nature. But because again, it's not merely about melatonin.
Right.
It's about all of these different signaling
Right.
that happen when we are living an optimal lifestyle that is in alignment with the light and dark cycles.
Right. It's about the hydration status of your body, the mitochondria making adequate water. You know, if you live indoors all the time under artificial lights and on your screen, that's a very dehydrating process as well. And for
Absolutely.
hormones to be in balance, especially hormones to be in balance enough for a baby to happen, you can't stay indoors all the time under artificial lights. Like, I'm getting all this input, I'm getting grounding, I've got bare feet on the ground, I'm getting the light from the sun, all of the stuff my body is getting. I'm actually getting hydrated right now, even though it's hot outside from being outdoors. I'm getting all these light signals that are going to help me sleep tonight. You know, I got that this morning with sunlight and UVA light. That will help my body repair and sleep tonight. And all these things, you know, they play such an intricate part to our overall hormonal balance. Again, food is important. We need to eat an ancestral diet with foods that are local, seasonal, very important. I don't want anyone eating Pop-Tarts and seed oils and processed foods. That stuff's not going to help you. But if you're eating all the perfect diet and all of that, but you're completely disconnected from light cycles, you don't protect your eyes inside of an artificial light environment, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle with your health, which is essentially what happened to me, which is why I'm so vocal about it now, is because my whole page was about food and diet and food. And I was in the background silently struggling with trying to get pregnant and doing everything perfect with the food. And then I discovered circadian rhythms. I discovered light. I started wearing blue blockers, you know, or the circadian glasses that you guys make. I started doing all these things, and my body, and I stopped taking a lot of the supplements that everyone says you should take. Actually stopped those. And then my body said, okay, let's have a baby, you know. But I'm very vocal about this, and it's not even people watching. Even if you don't want to have a baby, you just want to have balanced hormones, right? Because I don't think everyone's wanting to have babies. But if you just want your hormones to be balanced, which I think everyone understands what it's like to have hormones that are messed up, right?
Yeah,
Then
and we can think
vital.
of, absolutely, and we can think of, like, let's say when you say having a baby, it's a state of abundance within your body, a state of co-creation or creation. And if we don't want to have a baby, let's say, that state is still going to be maintained. However, that energy is going to be directed towards other things, maybe towards your business, maybe towards building your relationship,
your friends
maybe
and family,
towards starting a new business, maybe towards starting something new, a whole new creative process that is going to shift your way of life and how you relate to life. So again, like, yes, we are speaking about fertility and about having a baby, but overall, when we think about this, it's not necessarily only about having a baby. It's about whether the body is in a state of abundance and in a state of having enough, so that it can either produce a baby or do the other things that it wants to do, or it could be in a state of scarcity, thinking that doesn't have enough energy, thinking that it needs to be protecting itself,
Yes.
and therefore it's not gonna favor anything that is related to procreation, whether it's creating a baby or whether sitting and being creative and painting a beautiful painting.
Right.
It's gonna be more in a survival mode and in a state where it's trying to protect itself.
Right.
And talking about light and hormones, light absolutely affect our fertility, our steroid and sex hormone. And the master sex hormone, pregnenolone,
Yes.
which is produced in the inner membrane of the mitochondria in response to morning UVA light. And we can think of pregnenolone as like the core material, the core substance from which we can produce cortisol, estrogen, progesterone, and so on.
Yeah.
And we all know that estrogen and progesterone are absolutely important.
Yes.
And having balanced hormones in relation to this will be absolutely important to be able to prepare the womb and to create a baby.
Right.
So when we first wake up in the morning and we get in the habit of going outside, our body starts producing pregnenolone. And then the body converts some of this pregnenolone into cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
And this healthy pulse of cortisol will make us feel alert, energized, focused, and ready for the day. And then the body can use the rest of the pregnenolone and convert it into estrogen and progesterone so that it prepares the body to make a baby, or so that we have higher libido and healthy sex hormones, right?
I think that healthy sex hormones is so important. I've got two younger sisters, and I'm 43, and so they're late 30s, early 40s, and they're both feeling the effects of, the hormones starting to decline, specifically progesterone starting to get a little bit lower because of the cortisol, right? We become more sensitive. You don't have to have these horrible hormonal fluctuations, but a lot of women start having them, after 35. I'm actually getting a lot of women now in their 20s who are having the same issues, right? So, again, bringing it back around, it doesn't even necessarily have to be for fertility, making a baby, but if you have low progesterone, if you have these hormones that are super low and out of balance, it's going to affect your digestion. It's going to affect your skin. It's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect all this stuff. So I have my sister calling me, telling me she's like all of a sudden reacting to different foods she's never reacted to before. And I'm like, yeah. When do you have the reaction? Oh, second half of my cycle is the worst. Well, your progesterone's probably low because your circadian rhythms are trash. You don't want to hear it from me. I'm the crazy one that wears the blue blockers and goes out for sunrise and walks around barefoot. You don't want to hear it from me, but I'm trying to tell you that this is something you have to start paying attention to, especially as you get older. And if there's any hormonal dysfunction at play, start here. Yeah, you could try some supplements or whatever, but start with this first. You could probably save a lot of money on supplements just by doing these things. That's what I've been able to do. So, yeah.
It's crazy because I do believe that all of us in this modern world have lived a lifetime of training ourselves to see and think and perceive complexity.
Yes.
Which really divert us from being able to see the underlying simplicity of things. And when you go and say to your sister to go outside,
they're like
this very simple fact is taken for granted.
Yes.
And probably your sister is thinking, oh my God, it's if I'm experiencing all these effects, it must be something very complex, and the solution must be complex. So if you come and give me a simple solution, as simple as tuning in my light environment to more exposure to sunlight during the day and absolute darkness at night, it's too simple
Mm-hmm.
to the habit of thinking complex things.
Yes.
And oftentimes people cannot believe how simple
Yeah.
it is, right?
Yeah.
So, so it's funny, but at the same time, when we're dealing with someone who's dealing with so many different complex effects, and they're jumping from one blood test to
Yeah.
another, and from one supplement to another, maybe if they could, take a step back,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and slow down a little bit and start doing the things that are fundamental to life, that are fundamental to nature, and then maybe then taking a step to seeing how we can boost our biology, how we can boost our functioning by doing the right things that we could do after we have fixed the fundamental
Right.
things.
Fix the light environment. I had somebody, I just ran a 21-day leptin reset group where I taught them all about light, redox function, circadian rhythms, all this stuff, deuterium. We went into everything. And someone asked me, should I invest in XYZ supplement? I'm still waiting for my blue blockers to show up. I just decided I would order some light bulbs and change the light bulbs out in the house. And I'm like, don't order the supplement until you start using your blue blockers and the light bulbs. You may not need the supplement. Literally, don't spend your money on it. If you're waiting for your blue blockers to come and you're going to change your light bulbs out in your house, I want to see what kind of a huge impact that has on you, because it had a huge impact on me to the point where I got off of a bunch of supplements. Just like you said, it's too simple. What I can't do it. It's too simple. I need to spend the money. I need to get the blood test. I need to get this test or that test. I can't do that. That's too simple. But it really truly works. I mean, I'm sitting here telling you guys it really truly works, and it's called a quantum change because it's a little thing you do for a huge result. And like you said, we've been trained to think it has to be complicated. I need a full, blood panel, saliva panel, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, get that, but wait until after you implement these other changes first. Because I guarantee you, if you do these things 90 days from now and test your hormones 90 days from now, it's going to look like a completely different person. I will guarantee that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And most supplements companies and most influencers who recommend supplements all the time probably do not know. I don't want to say like they don't tell people, because I'm sure they themselves don't know that every mineral, every vitamin that we consume has a maximum wavelength absorption characteristic. In other words, this food that we eat or this supplement that we take can only be catalyzed by being exposed to a specific frequency of light that matches that type of food. And this is how we kickstart our metabolism. This is how we increase our ability to absorb nutrients, vitamins, and minerals into our cells. And there's another very important thing. I thought it's very cool because the blood that is pumped by our heart circulates through our eyes every 2 hours.
Yes.
And it turns out that the light entering our eyes, it stimulates this blood, and it stimulates the nutrients in our blood so that it's properly being absorbed into our cells. Now, what most people do, most people wear sunglasses outdoors, and most people are being exposed to frequencies of light that are absolutely deficient and that are far off from being similar to the frequency of light that we have evolved under, which is sunlight.
Yes.
So if sunlight has this absolutely amazing power to enable us to actually catalyze the food that we eat, to actually absorb the nutrients into our blood, what is then the implication of spending most of our days under a frequency of light that is far off from this nurturing frequency that we evolved under?
Yes.
Again, the effects will be absolutely complex.
Yes.
It could show up as fertility problems.
Yes.
It could show up as lack of libido. It could show up as brain fog, depression, anxiety,
digestion, gut issues
weight gain,
are huge.
digestion issues.
Yeah.
All of these things are complex effects of a very fundamental, simple cause, which is living in balance with our environment.
Yep. I always say this, the further we get away from our natural environment, the further we detach from nature, the sicker that we get, you know, and there.
Yes, because the further we detach from nature, it means that the further we're detaching from ourselves,
Yes.
because there's no real differentiation between what nature is and us. We are one with
Yes.
nature, and we are nature. So,
Yeah.
in other words, when we are in misalignment with nature, we are in misalignment with our very self.
Yeah. Sorry about that. My phone overheated. That's we're having this great conversation about being outdoors, and my phone totally went into emergency mode, and I had to bring it inside and throw it in front of the air conditioning vent. I'm so sorry.
Well, that's
How
that's
ironic
one
is
of
that,
the
right?
that's one of the effects of living in quantum life as well.
Poor connections. That's okay. When I will be able to hopefully take that last chat and save it, and then go ahead and loop it together with this one onto YouTube. Hopefully Instagram saved it and didn't lose that chat, but because it was so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were talking about cortisol actually.
Yes.
And interestingly, back in the 1970s, there is the German scientist Fritz Hollwich, who published many studies showing that sitting under this artificial light increased the stress hormone cortisol and ACTH abnormally. And this distorted artificial light entering our eyes is actually perceived by our mitochondria as stress. And it continuously diverts pregnenolone, which we were speaking about, from fertility and sex pathways to more cortisol. And this start taxing our sexual glands, and it start leading to brain fog and this kind of like sluggishness. Now, when this happens at night, it's even more dangerous, because the nighttime is that window of time that we're not supposed to have cortisol in our body. We're supposed to have melatonin, the highest antioxidant. And cortisol at night should be really lower than 1 microgram per deciliter. And if you ask so many people in our modern world who are trying to solve their problems by taking more supplements and more melatonin pills, if you take a test of their cortisol, you'll see that their cortisol is peaking at night. So many people report their cortisol even more than 10 microgram per deciliter at night. And as a result, they actually sleep terribly, and their sexual glands are really being overtaxed, because all of this pregnenolone that's being produced in the morning is being diverted into more cortisol, and it's this chronic cortisol secretion that eventually leads to adrenal fatigue, what we call adrenal fatigue. And we start even waking up in the morning feeling sluggish and struggling with momentum. Why is that? Because actually in the morning, we need this healthy pulse of the rising tide of cortisol. It should be around 16 microgram per deciliter. But many people who are living this chronic artificial light exposure lifestyle start suffering from low cortisol in the morning, and therefore they wake up lacking the alertness, energy, and motivation to go about the day. And eventually they start heading into a lifestyle of a night owl, or thinking of themselves as not a morning person. It's not that you're not a morning person. It's actually your lifestyle that is leading you to wake up with the wrong hormones, that where your melatonin is high at the wrong time of the day, and your cortisol is low when it's supposed to be higher, and you're feeling that you're hating yourself, you're hating the world, you're hating the morning. But it's not about whether you're a morning person or not. It's about retuning those hormones so that they are being activated and being released at the right time of the day.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, and someone wants to know, does sunrise help with this? It's sunrise and UVA, and not looking at your phone before sunrise and UVA. That's key, because what a lot of people do is they wake up and they roll over, and the first thing they do is shine, like you said, that blue light in their face that doesn't have any of the other spectrums from nature in it, and it causes cortisol to be unnaturally high, right? So ideally, we don't want to look at the phone first thing. We want to just go straight outside, see sunrise, get that UVA light, and UVA is where all those hormones are synthesized, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Again, like when we speak of, so many health experts right now talk about sunrise, 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 and the importance of getting that sunrise for at least 5 to 10 minutes.
Right.
But again, it's not about one thing that is more important than the other.
Right.
It's about stacking all of these frequencies of light that start layering on top of each other as the day move on. And every frequency is equally as important as the other one. There's no one frequency that is more important than the other. So many people today, you know, they focus so much on red light and infrared light, and they think of blue light and UV light as the evil, or like the thing to avoid from sunlight, which is absolutely untrue. And I would even say that shifting from a lifestyle where you're chronically bombarded by blue light all the time to a lifestyle where you become living in red and infrared light all the time while trying to avoid the other things is going to shift you from one side of the pendulum to the other.
Yes.
And you're forever riding this pendulum that is taking you from one extreme to the other. The reason why so many people benefit from red and infrared light in isolation at the beginning is because they have spent years on one side of the pendulum, and doing something that is swinging them back to the other side of the pendulum is beneficial at first. But then if we start acquiring the wrong belief that infrared and red light are the good thing in nature and blue and UV are the wrong thing in nature, eventually we're going to start living on that other side of the pendulum. And I bet that we're going to start seeing studies showing how red light in isolation is actually causing so many different problems. Because again,
I agree. I just did a post on that over the weekend about how we, you know, nature and these things that we do are on this upside down U-shaped curve, right? It's like you do it, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's great, and then you do too much and it's not, right? It goes in a U. And red light therapy is on that, because if you expose your body to the red light panels too much, that can create oxidative stress. Just like too much cold therapy, too much UVB light, right? Midday sun.
Yes.
You have to be smart about these things. And nature wouldn't have us in front of a red light panel for 2 hours a day, right? That's not an appropriate dosage. It's very great and it's healing. It's a good thing, but we have to understand, again, the further away we get from nature and trying to outsmart nature, the more our bodies are going to get sick and disconnected. And that you can do that with these great biohacks just as easily as you can do it with staying indoors on your computer and TV and phone all the time. You'll end up kind of in a dysfunctional place doing both, right?
Yes, absolutely. And this is very clear because of the law of polarity in nature. And the law of polarity, observing it, you can see that all divided parts or seemingly divided parts in nature are continuously looking to find that balance in uniting. And if you think of blue and red light, they're two pairs of opposite, okay? Blue is on one side of the spectrum and red light is completely on the other side of the spectrum. And blue and red light in nature are continuously interchanging the balance so that they can unite, and they could lead to balance effects. However, our lifestyle has made it such that blue light is dominant and there's a lack of red light, and this is causing eventually health problems and inflammation and all the things that we mentioned. And so many people look at the problem, okay, well, blue light is bad, there's a lack of red light, then let's start bathing in red. Now, yes, at the beginning it's going to be beneficial, But eventually, again, think of going from one side of the pendulum to another. You're forever swinging, and you're forever going from one imbalanced state to the other, whereas nature is continuously whispering for you to find that balanced rhythmic interchange where the polar opposites unite in the 0 point.
Right. And just like, you know, I know a lot of people, they have jobs they have to go to. They don't have the luxury that you and I do of kind of working for yourself and being able to spend more time outdoors. And what I always tell those people is you have to continually tell your body what time it is as much as you can. So sunrise, UVA, if you can only get 5 minutes of each of those, fine. And if you're inside working on a computer, if you have to be indoors, you have to take breaks to go outside with no glasses on, so your body actually gets those signals. You know, if you're going to be on a computer or in an area where there's a lot of artificial light, you want to wear the glasses that you have on to kind of protect that rhythm, you know, so it's not this crazy amount of unnatural blue light. But even with the glasses, they're hugely helpful. You have to take time as much as you can during the day. I tell people, if you can take a break every hour to go outside for just 5 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, no glasses. What time is it? Okay, body, we know what time it is. We can go back inside. Because the light is changing throughout the day, our hormones are also changing throughout the day. Our hormones are on this beautiful circadian, you know, rhythm, and the light is the biggest thing that tells us what time it is, right? Light, and then our meal timing too is also important, but the light is going to trump all of that. So yeah, I know people have to work and you have to be indoors sometimes, but I mean, I had to come inside because my phone overheated, but I've got the window open behind me so that I am able to balance that out, and my body can still light can travel through a window, you know, so it's important that we're still giving that signal to our body.
Yes, absolutely. It's very important. And please, people, do not ever think that it's about the glasses, or do not ever think that it's about the bulb. It's never about the two. It's always about finding that balance point. Yes. Oftentimes, those tools are designed in a very specific way to help us move towards balance. But do not make it about the tool. Make it about finding that balance instead, and use the tool in order to guide your journey toward that center point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And somebody wanted to know, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, someone wanted to know if the sun from 9 to 11 was more beneficial than the midday sun 12 to 3. I'd love to hear your answer on this. My answer is they're both equally beneficial, right? They have different purposes. 9 to 11 is typically going to be UVA. 12 to 3 is going to be more UVB, where that's a stronger light frequency. And your body needs both of those for specific purposes. What's your take on that?
Yeah, like the thing is, if you look at this question, it's stemming from the consciousness of thinking that there's the polarity consciousness, that there's something good and something bad, that there's something better and something not good for us. However, in nature, it doesn't necessarily work that way. And in nature, everything just is. It's not no good nor bad, and it's how we relate to it that will make it good or bad. Okay, so we cannot ever say that 9 till 11 is more important than 12 till 3. And even all of our scientific research that could isolate parts of the whole and study 9 till 11 and then 12 till 3 and come up with isolated conclusions will not be entitled to make us make a conclusion that 9 till 11 is better than 12 till 3, because it's isolating part of the whole, and we are making conclusions that do not necessarily integrate with the whole.
Right.
Okay, so what is more important, 9 till 11 or 12 till 3? They're equally as important. Yep. And instead of thinking like which one is more important, let us start thinking by creating habits that would enable us to get window of times from both.
Yeah.
9 till 11, maybe 10-15 minutes from the 12 till 3, 15, 20 minutes from that.
Yeah. Yeah, she says she's only asking because she can only take a break outside once or twice during work. So I would say if you can get out for UVA and then also get out for UVB, so your eyes and body get those two different frequencies, then that's going to, I think that's would be beneficial. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally. It also depends on where she lives
Yes.
and the time of the season. Where I live right now in Mexico, let's say the sun is rising at 6:30.
Yep.
Around 7:30, UVA
Yep.
start appearing in the environment. And around 8:10, UVB starts appearing.
It's here. It's like that here too, actually, right now, because I'm walking at sunrise and then I'm outside eating breakfast for UVA. And then I'm getting the signal from my D-Minder app that the UVB is starting like 9 o'clock in the morning, but it's in the spring and in the fall, that is different, right? It changes. So you have to know the D-Minder app or the Circadian Life app, both will tell you sunrise, UVA, UVB, like the different frequencies that are available outside, correct?
Yes, and then it becomes about understanding your needs and what works best for you. Mm-hmm. You might want to dose 15 minutes on UVA. Many experts will tell you you need 5 minutes. To me, I like 2 hours. I function optimally when I do 2 hours. And when I say 2 hours, you know, it makes the whole difference for me in terms. Some people say, well, how do you have 2 hours outdoors when you're working? Well, I start like positioning and stacking things in my life to happen to be more outdoors. Like if I exercise, I would rather go and exercise outdoors rather in a gym under blue artificial light.
Yeah.
If I have the chance to take my laptop and work outdoors, I always do this. If I want to meditate, you know, I often try to seek some shade and meditate. And even when you're sitting in the shade, you're still getting a lot of the beneficial frequencies because they're reflecting off the green and the trees, and they even amplify. So you don't necessarily need to be like exactly in direct sun. Now, being in direct sun has its own, you know, beauty and benefit. However, you also want to be mindful of your skin type, of your habits as well, like where you've been living, what you've been doing, whether you've been living an indoor lifestyle that is very alienated from sunlight. And this will mean that you want to be very careful on how you start reintroducing sunlight in your life, and you don't want to go crazy about sitting and burning yourself. You want to build it up. And speaking about burning ourselves, you know, most people also don't realize that when you spend the whole day outside in the sun, your body is producing all these reactive oxygen species, which is, again, not necessarily something bad. It could be absolutely something great. But then when we come back home, our ancestors were exposed to absolute darkness. Yes. And melatonin was flowing in their body, which is the highest antioxidant. And it's a natural sunscreen that will enable us to repair, but also will enable us to absorb more sunlight the following day. Yes. So make sure that when you start introducing more sunlight in your life, you want to equally start introducing more darkness in your life. We don't want to also go from one side of the pendulum to the other. Most people right now are stuck on this side of the pendulum where they have very dim light during the day. They don't have enough sunlight that trigger their circadian clock at night. And they have so much bright light at night. Right, yeah. So they're living upside down kind of thing. Now, what I also see that people learning about quantum biology and the power of light, some people go on to the opposite side of the spectrum, where they start doing a lot of sunlight during the day and they don't take the time to balance this out with equal darkness because they're overactive, they want to get things done. They don't believe that resting is the absolute most important thing that will actually enable you to get things done. And then eventually they fall into this rabbit hole of, overexposing themselves to sunlight and not enough darkness to balance that.
Yeah, they have to have the time to repair. And that's I mean, I think that's the overarching theme of the conversation is it's all in balance, right? You can't just isolate, just like this is why a lot of supplements don't work for people, is because you're just isolating one nutrient, one mineral, one thing, and everything works together. You know, minerals work in symphony, vitamins work in symphony. It's going to be different if you eat a whole food, like eat an oyster, versus taking a zinc supplement. You know, oyster has all, you know, iodine, selenium, B12, has all these cofactors along with that zinc. It has copper to balance out, right? Just like sunlight, if you just take one time of the day, or you just take one spectrum of light, it's not going to do for you what you want it to do. It's about the full picture and creating balance as a whole, you know? And so understanding that on a very fundamental level, I think it is what I want to get across. I'm sure you do as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you look at the chemical elements and the chemical table,
Yep.
what we don't realize is that every chemical element in the mineral space is looking for balanced rhythmic interchange by bonding with the chemical element with the same electric potential.
Exactly.
And
Just Google mineral wheel, and you'll see this beautiful wheel of minerals and how they all interplay with one another, right?
Absolutely. And you know how explosions are created? By mixing two chemical elements that cannot interchange in balance, that have a massive difference in their electric potential. This is how we create explosions.
Wow.
So if we think about this and we try to relate it to our body, what are we really doing when we take all these things in isolated ways?
Exactly.
Are we allowing the body and the chemical intelligence in the body to find balance by interchanging in a balanced way? Most often not, because we're taking things and we're not taking into consideration how these things interact with the whole.
Exactly. Yeah, and light is the same way. So it's not, I mean, there are definitely, I think if you have to choose between sunrise and sunset, you got to choose the sunrise, you know? And I think that UVA light is probably more important than going outside during the afternoon. I would prioritize the morning over anything else if you have to choose. But what's going to be best for your body and keeping it in balance as a whole is to try to experience different times of the day in sequential order throughout the day, and getting adequate darkness at night, not turning on all the lights and the TV and scrolling in bed with your phone, which I know is a super hard habit to break. Trust me, I had to break that one. But when we're doing that, we are destroying the body's ability to make that melatonin to repair from what we've done during the day. And again, we have to look at things as a whole, not just let's take this supplement and let's just do this one little thing. It's everything together.
Yes, and even when we speak about light, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
We gotta take the whole.
Yes.
We gotta realize that blue light and red light are interchanging and they are opposite and they balance each other out.
Yes.
UVA, UVB, and infrared light, they're interchanging and they balance each other out. So how can we find a routine, a daily routine that enable us to get equal amounts of these so that we can live a balanced day? And how can we also balance this amount of light with an equal amount of darkness?
Yes.
So both of those two aspects are absolutely important. Balancing your light exposure within itself and understanding how different parts of the light spectrum interchange with other parts and finding that center point where we're getting both, and also understanding how light interchange with darkness and creating a lifestyle that enable us equal amounts of darkness and of light and darkness. Yeah. And this absolutely happens in nature, because even for someone who lives up north, let's say, almost the day is never the amount of daylight is never equal to the amount of darkness. However, if you spread the numbers across a full year where there's different seasons, when in summer you have much longer days, much shorter and much shorter nights, and in the winter you have much shorter days and much longer nights, if you spread this across a year, you will see that it's going to be absolutely interchanging in balance, and it's going to reach that 0 point that we're speaking about.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I love it. I think this has been super helpful. I don't know if the first part of our conversation saved. I'm crossing my fingers, but even the last part of it was really helpful and really informative. And yeah, thank you for coming on and chatting with me, Rudy. That's been awesome. And you guys can find Rudy, follow him over at Viva Rays, and I've got a discount code Carnivore Yogi, or actually it's Yogi, if you want to check out any of the Viva Rays products. I think they're awesome and use them myself. And yeah, I think this has been a great chat.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure, Sarah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you having you here. Bye.
Bye, everyone.